Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This is Mother Ganges, the river in the form of a goddess, speaking to her devotee, you could say. He has just made great petition for many, many years to ask something of her if she will come to the world and free the world of papa, sinful reaction. So then she says yes on these conditions. Kopi dharayata vegam patantya me mahitale anyata bhutalam bitva nripa yasye rasatalam. Mother Ganges replied to Bhagavatam, when I fall from the sky to the surface of planet Earth, the water will certainly be very forceful. Who will sustain that force? If I am not sustained, I shall pierce the surface of the earth and go down to Rasatala, the Patala area of the universe. Then in 5, she says, Kim chaham na bhuvam yasye naramayam rajantyagam mrajami tadagam kwaham rajangs tatra vichintayan. O King, I do not wish to go down to planet Earth, for there the people in general will bathe in my water to cleanse themselves of the sinful reaction, of the reactions of their sinful deeds. When all these sinful reactions accumulate in me, how shall I become free from them? You must consider this very carefully. Srila Prabhupada writes his commentary as follows. The Supreme Personality of Godhead says, Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam raja ahang tvang sarva papebhyo mokshayashrami masucha. I call this my fridge magnet verse. For everyone in England, we say certain verses are fridge magnets. Every time you eat, you should remember this verse. So stick it on your refrigerator and learn it. It means abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear. That's 1866 of the Bhagavad Gita. So the Supreme Person can accept the reactions of anyone's sinful deeds and neutralize them because he is pavitra, pure, like the sun, which is never contaminated by any worldly infection. Te jiyasam nadoshaya vani sarvabhujo yata. Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 33rd chapter, 29th verse. One who is very powerful is not affected by any sinful activity. But here we see that Mother Ganges fears being burdened with the sins of the people in general who would bathe in her waters. This indicates that no one but the Supreme Personality of Godhead is able to neutralize the reactions of past sinful deeds, whether one's own or those of others. Sometimes the spiritual master, after accepting a disciple, must take charge of that disciple's sinful activities and, being overloaded, must sometimes suffer, if not fully, then partially, for the sinful acts of the disciple. Every disciple, therefore, must be very careful not to commit sinful activities after initiation. The poor spiritual master is kind and merciful enough to accept the disciple and partially suffer for that disciple's sinful activities. But Krishna, being merciful to his servant, neutralizes the reactions of sinful deeds for the servant who engages in preaching his glories. Even Mother Ganges feared the sinful reactions of the people in general and was anxious about how she would counteract the burden of these sins. Wonderful. So this story that we've been studying for the past few chapters and Hare Krishna. Thank you all for being here this morning. I see your names, not all of your faces, but I see your internet identities. So I superimpose a personality on the picture or the cartoon or the visual that I see. And the story that we are discussing is all about superimposition, superimposing, the tendency of the mind to superimpose something on another reality. That's what has happened in the story so far. There's an old story, and I'm sure you've heard of it before, about the two ships at midnight in the middle of the ocean. Do you know this one? No, you don't know this one? A very common one. When I tell it, you'll go, oh yes, I know that one. So there's two ships, two big ships. And at midnight, they meet in the ocean. One big ship is slightly bigger than the other ship. And he can see a light off in the distance. The captain on the ship can see a light off in the distance. And he says, tell that ship to move slightly to the left. He says, he's on a collision course. He says, yes, sir. He sends a signal. Signal comes back. No, I shall not move. You move. And the king says, rather the captain, king of his ship, the captain sends back a message. He says, you must move now. I'm a battleship. And the other light sends back a message. You move now. I'm a lighthouse. So, of course, immediately the captain of the big ship, he moved. He was superimposing his identity as big ship on this other light in the ocean, when in actual fact it was a lighthouse, and it would be good for him to move himself. This is our tendency, to take our mental state and to project it, to make a superimposition, to impose our mind on the mind of someone else, or in a situation or something that we've heard, or something like that. And the reason I'm telling you about this is because the sons of King Sagar, great king who was performing a sacrificial fire ceremony, and there was a horse involved, and the horse was stolen by Indra, and King Sagar sent his many thousands of sons. He said, go look in all directions for the horse. And eventually they turned up at Kapila Deva's ashram, and they saw the sage sitting there in meditation, and they saw the horse. So they put the two things together. They superimposed the fact that they were looking for a thief who has stolen our horse, our father's horse. They saw the horse. So they superimposed the fact that this rishi who was sitting there in meditation was the thief. Now, of course, he wasn't the thief. He had nothing to do with the horse. The horse just turned up in his ashram. But immediately they behaved disrespectfully to the sage. He opened his eyes and he burned them to ashes. So from their superimposition came a big problem, death. So when you're with a saintly person, a godly person, a divine person, if they don't have at that particular point in the day sufficient charity to explain themselves to you, then you should be very careful. You may be burned to ashes. So in this ancient story, the story is told to explain to us the dangers of superimposing our belief system or superimposing our conceptions or mentality at that particular moment, whether it be anger or any other negative emotion, onto a situation which is not deserving of our anger at all. In classic Indian philosophy, this is known as aropa or adhyas, superimposition, imposing something on top, to project onto something or someone or a whole situation your own mental state or your own limited knowledge. In the South Pacific, there's a famous story of superimposition when a small aircraft touched down on the beach, and the South Sea Islanders, who are quite primitive, they came forward with bananas because they thought that we shall feed this big bird that has just landed. So they were trying to feed bananas to the engine of the plane, thinking that this is a bird, came out of the sky, so it must be a bird, big silver bird. We will now feed the bird. So one of my friends used to be in the organization called the IRA. It's the Irish Republican Army, fighting for the unification of all of Ireland. And he said once he took part in an operation where they created what looked like a street accident, and 16 different people were involved, and they were all actors. But the local authorities that came along, they saw this and immediately superimposed the mentality that, oh yes, we know what this is. We know what this is. This is not suspicious at all. This is something that we know how to deal with this. But their dealing with it meant that their energies were contained on that spot while the real emergency was going on somewhere else. So this aropa or adhyasa means to superimpose meaning on something which does not contain meaning. Another Sanskrit expression is atmavan manyate jagat. As I think, so the whole world thinks. Atmavan manyate jagat. I'm thinking like this, therefore I see the world in those terms. Sometimes we say, oh, he saw the world with tinted spectacles. So I have some spectacles. Luckily for me, I can see you all. Prabhuji and all of you, I can see you all because these are transparent. But suppose they were tinted with a particular color. I will see the world like that. Sometimes our physical health is such that we see the world, if we have a diseased liver, we see the world as tinted yellow. Our eyes go yellow and the whole world goes yellow because I have what is known as yellow fever. So it's my problem. The world has not turned yellow, but I see it like that because the problem is with me. In classical philosophy, we have the four defects of the human being. One is karanapatava, or imperfect senses. The senses, even if they're not colored yellow or suffering from a liver disease, our senses are imperfect. We have a tendency to commit mistakes, known as pramad. Now we make mistakes. Brahma, confusion. Brahma actually means like a potter's wheel spins. We become very like head spinning, bewildered. And viparlipsa, in that condition, we not only cheat ourselves, but we cheat other people as well. So these are the tendencies that we have. And in that condition, with all those four defects, then we superimpose our reality on the reality of the world. So the business of everyone in human life is to wake up to what is the real reality by removing the sleepiness, removing the tendency to make mistakes and to cheat others, and to removing the problems of the senses. So these thousands of sons of King Sagar, they made this mistake and they suffered for it. And they were reduced to a pile of ashes, which is a very grotesque consequence of superimposing your search for a thief onto a saintly person. And so Sagar, once he heard what had happened, he didn't hear yet, but what happened was his grandson, Amshuman, he said, well, they haven't come back. They went a long time ago. They haven't come back yet. Please try and find them. So Amshuman went everywhere. And Amshuman also came to, he picked up their trail. He came to Kapila's ashram, but he was different. He was respectful. And Kapila could deal with him. This being respectful, one of the descendants of Amshuman was King Ramachandra. And Lord Ram, the incarnation of Lord Vishnu, Lord Narayan, when he came to the very difficult test to string the bow of Lord Shiva, he came, and whereas others tried to simply go and pick up the bow, he came and he was respectful. He circled the bow and offered his pranams like this, and this was an anga of Lord Shiva. So indirectly Ram was paying his respects to Lord Shiva, and he picked up the bow and strung it and even broke it quite easily. In life, it's always good to bow down. In life, it's always good to be humble when you approach any person, certainly a person of greater power. First mistake that you would make is thinking this person is shorter than me, therefore he's less powerful than me. I am tall, he is small. I am bigger, he is smaller. I am better. Big mistake. Then you may see what you think is a poor man, and you may think to yourself, I am rich, he is poor. I know more, he knows less. Big mistake. Because you never know. Most of the world's great inventions have been made by men and women who, if you looked at them on the outside, you would never know that these people are very intelligent or capable or introspective or philosophical, or they just, I know many people who are very, very rich people, and you wouldn't see them on the street. They don't, as we say, splash the cash or flash the cash. You would see them and you wouldn't think anything of them. But in this way, if you're seeing the world with regard to trying to see who you can dominate or who you can be better than, this is an unhelpful way. The Vedic way is to cultivate two things in your short human life: to cultivate respect for others by gestures, by speech, by your words, by your mentality, and gratitude. So respect and gratitude are the two hallmarks of Vedic culture. That is why when we come into Vedic culture, one of the words that everybody hears first of all is Namaste. Namas, my respects. Te, unto you. Namaste, my respects to you. So this gesture that accompanies Namaste is one that is really, it's not only submitting yourself to the other person and indirectly claiming that they are better than you, but it opens up that other person to whom you are making that gesture to give you rather than to be threatened by you. Whereas in Western culture, we go for the handshake, don't we? We go for the handshake, which means a greeting between equals. I'm equal to you. And if I grip your hand a little tighter before the interview, you will know that I'm something to deal with. But the further east you go, India and Thailand and all these other countries, and we get to Japan, and you bow, and then the other person bows down, the other person bows down. It's a competition who can bow the most. So this is progressive culture. Anyway, Amshuman, he was there and he was paying his respects to Kapila. Kapila gave him the whole picture. He said, unfortunately, your father and your uncles did not go to Swarga. They did not go to heaven. And Amshuman was, to hear something like this for a person in Vedic culture, for the son of a king, is the ultimate in grief. Not only did they die, that's one thing, but they didn't go to heaven. They did not go to heaven after they died. He was inconsolable. This is a terrible thing to have happened. He cried and he cried and he cried. How is that possible? My uncles, they didn't go to heaven. How can I make this right? You see, the whole principle, especially for Brahmins, is moksha, ultimate freedom from samsara. But for the Kshatriyas and those of lesser capability, the ultimate goal is Swarga. to go to heaven, that place where they can enjoy a peaceful life of celestial delights for many thousands of years. So that is why in Vedic culture, the son is known as Putra. Putra means Putra, one who delivers from Put, one who takes you out of Put. When a father has a son who can help him be taken out of hell and promote him to heaven, then this is considered to be a proper son. Chanakya Pandit, he says, jokingly, he says that there's two types of son, Putra and Mutra. He said they both come from the same place. Putra is a son who can relieve you from hell, and Mutra is a name for urine. So they both come from the same place, but Putra and Mutra, they give opposite and incomparably different benefit for the parents. So how to stress everything that we read in the philosophy of Vedic culture, or the religion of Vedic culture, is about committing good deeds or good karma so that you can inherit good karma phala. And good karma is known as punya. And correspondingly, bad deeds are known as papa. So minimizing your sins and maximizing your good deeds, this is the business of someone who wants to be Arya or progressive in human life, who does not yet cultivate bhakti. Of course, I'm speaking to all of you as people in the Bhakti Center, or very much affiliated to the Bhakti Center, so you'll know that this verse that we read in the purport, Mam ekam sharanam vraja, Krishna says that, you can bypass all this balancing of punya with pap if you just surrender to me. That's a sort of arrangement that Krishna glorifies right through the Bhagavad Gita and culminates in that verse. But for most people, they calculate in terms of what is the reaction on this activity, what is the reaction on this action, and they try to balance it or mitigate the sins and develop their punya. So they actively seek out things that I can do to develop great punya. So because they know that if I feed cows, or if I give to widows, or if I feed the poor, plant trees, dig wells, these are all standard activities from which people will benefit for many years in the future. And so they actively search these things out, and these things are glorified in Vedic scripture. And of course, there's concomitant reactions and benefits described within the pages of Vedic literature. For instance, if you do this, you will be benefited in this way. If you do that, you'll be benefited in that way. Most people are very calculating. So this is why there is great charity within Vedic culture. And sometimes it's based on compassion, and sometimes it's based completely on a self-centered desire to go to heaven at the end of this life. So you've heard all about the conversation Bhagavad Gita, which was spoken before the great battle of Kurukshetra. But when the peace talks failed, the kings met together to discuss where they would have a battle. And they chose Kurukshetra because they thought, well, at least if the warriors die in the battlefield, not if, but they knew that thousands and thousands would die. So if they die on the battlefield, then at least they will die in a place which is holy, and they will go to Swarga, they will go to heaven. So again, making this calculation that, that at the end of life. So So here's Amshuman, and he's been confronted with this terrible, terrible thing that has happened to not just one of his family members, but the whole crew, the whole generation. They've been wiped out. And Kapila tells him, he says, well, he says, not your son, but your grandson will be able to deliver them from hell. So this is terrible, of course, but it's a solution. So he reports back to his grandfather. So Amshuman's son is Dilip. And Dilip, when you go to India, Dilip is still a very popular name for sons. Every family's got Dilip Mama or Dilip Kaka. So then the son of Dilip is Bhagirat. And Bhagirat, we've seen in the last chapter, he performs this 1,000-year austerity. Austerity means a voluntary difficulty that you take on for some higher aim. So he takes this on. And here is Ganges, who appears to him in her form not as a river, but as a goddess. And she's telling him that, I need some things. If I'm going to come, I need some things. And so eventually he goes into deep meditation again. And he asks Lord Shiva if you will catch Ganga when she arrives. And of course he agrees. And that's why we always see Lord Shiva with the Ganges trapped in his hair. We sometimes see her face. Next time you see an image of Lord Shiva, you see the Ganges here in his head, in the matted locks of his head. And you'll also sometimes see that the Ganges is, I'll come down a little bit, the Ganges is coming out like this and flowing from his matted locks. And Lord Shiva, meanwhile, he's just in meditation. So no one else was able to take that flow. But bringing out the message here, we must say that when you perform tapasya, it is not an empty gesture. It is not just a personal thing that you're doing or meant to make you mentally powerful or whatever. It's being done for someone. Tapasya is for someone. Like mantras are for someone. It's not an impersonal meditative practice or gesture or an experience. It's an interpersonal transaction. Everything that you do in one sense is interpersonal. It's just our superimposition that causes us to imagine that the universe is not personal. But when you remove your conditioning and you see that the universe and everything in it is personal, then everything that you do becomes an interpersonal reaction. So many people in yoga studios, they have this sun salutations. Everybody knows the Surya Namaskar. So when you go to, it practically speaking is India's greatest export to the West. When you go to the airport in Delhi, you'll see a series of statues of sun salutations in one part of the airport lounge. And I was having a discussion with someone, this yoga teacher, and she told me that for every asana in the flow of the sun salutations, there is a mantra. Om Suryaya Namah, I forget, but the different names of the sun. I said, yes, those are different names of the sun. And Surya Namaskar means that you're doing the namas, or respect, kara, namaskara, kara, doing the respects to the Surya, the sun. She said, no, I don't think that's what it means. I said, what do you mean you don't think that that's what it means? She said, well, I don't think that yoga or the Surya Namaskar is offering respects to the sun. I said, well, it's in the name. Surya Namaskara. Yes, but it may mean that, but it doesn't mean that. I said, well, it comes from a tradition, and you cannot separate the tradition from the meaning. But that's why you chant the mantras at the same time as you do the actions in the Surya Namaskara. She said, well, I don't chant the mantras. I said, that may be, but the mantras are meant to be chanted because every aspect of the Surya Namaskara is you're bowing down. You're bowing down, and you're bowing down to the sun. And it just so happens that the whole dynasty that we're talking about here in the 9th chapter and in the 8th chapter is the dynasty which comes from the sun. Sun is a person. Sun has the sun, the S-U-N, has a son, S-O-N, and then the dynasty begins. So she said, well, yeah, but I don't accept that. I said, accept it or not. With respect, I must say that everything that you do is, but it's not important. I said, you may say it's, but everything is important. If Surya Namaskar is important, then everything that goes with the package is important. That's like saying, oh, here in this box on the side of a wall is a heart defibrillator. They have those in America. I'm sure they do. I'm sure here in England we got those from America, meant to start someone's heart when the heart is stopped. And they provide them as a free service in different parts of this country. If you go to a supermarket, there's always a defibrillator hanging on the wall in a box, and you can open it up and you can start someone's heart moving. Now, but let's say you think, well, the defibrillator is very important, but I don't think it's important for me to read the instructions. I'm sorry, but it is. It's probably better that you read the instructions before you have to use the defibrillator, but everything is important. That's why it's coming along with it. So Surya Namaskar comes along with the Surya Namaskar is a tantra that comes along with a mantra. Tantra is an action that causes something to expand, something to become illuminated, something to grow. And a mantra is the power source that makes that action fruitful. So she said, oh, that is not important. So an example I've given to you before is that in Europe, where I'm speaking to you from, there is a country known as Poland, and it was invaded by Germany during the beginning of the Second World War, and then it was invaded by Russia. And the Russian soldiers, many of them came from villages, but the Polish people had some taps, just a water tap, faucet you call it. You turn the tap and out it comes. So they saw this, and this was a great wonder for them because they had wells where they had to put the bucket down and sort of bring the water up in a bucket. And so some of them started taking the taps off the wall and putting them in their pocket to take them home to their country. Not understanding that a tap has to be, a faucet has to be connected to the main pipe to give any kind of result. So this is another type of superimposition. I see the final thing, and I think that's it. That's all of it. I see the tap, and I think that's where the water comes from. So therefore, what need do I have for anything else? I know. This is called Utsaha Mai. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur calls it Utsaha Mai, the enthusiasm of a child. Child is very enthusiastic. Yeah, I know. You don't have to tell me. I've had 3 children, and without fail, when they get to a certain age, they go, I know. You don't have to. They wave their hand like this. Don't tell me anything. I know. So when it's Janavi or Tulsi or I know. You don't have to tell me anything. And then they stay that way until they're about 40. and then maybe they listen to someone who's older. But until that point, I know becomes their superimposition on the world. I know, you don't have to tell me. I'm not foolish. But Bhagavatam says, I'm sorry. Please be humble. You know a lot, that's true. But I'm here, says the Srimad Bhagavatam, to tell you that there's a lot that you don't know. So be humble enough, and then you will find someone who will tell you what you don't know. He or she who think that they know everything will never be able to find a guru. How can you find a guru if you think you already know everything? Well, why do I want a guru? I don't want a guru. I already know everything anyway, so I don't need a guru. No, my friend, you are the person who needs a guru because you think you know everything. When you think you know nothing, that's a good time to have a guru. And therefore, pranipat, falling down in front of the guru and asking, please tell me. So in this particular case, we see Bhagirath. What's the time? What is the time? I don't have the time on my...
We have...
Huh?
It's 7:53. It's 7:53, bro. There is no darshan in me that at 8 or anything. You can take your time, bro. No problem.
Okay, thank you. So here Bhagirath is very successfully doing his pranipat. First to Gangamata, and secondly to Shiva. And Lord Shiva, luckily for him, is known as Ashutosh. Ashutosh means that he can be very easily pleased, but unfortunately he can be very easily angered as well. So you have to be very careful with Lord Shiva that you retain your dainya, your humility. So in the last verse spoken by Lord Krishna, his Charama Shloka, he says, surrender only to me, mam ekam, only to me. So in the Vedas, we are encouraged to surrender and be very faithfully devoted to different gods. So when Krishna says, if you surrender to me, I will spare you from having to surrender to all the other gods. And besides, if you surrender to all those other gods, people who worship those other gods are worshiping me, but in a different way, in a wrong way, he says. So we get that right. And sometimes devotees feel that then that means we have to be disrespectful to the gods. But that's also another mistake. We should not be disrespectful. However, we should reserve our full surrender for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But we should be very respectful to all others who represent him and who fill the universe with gifts. For instance, when we have a big festival for a wedding, it is very much centered on Krishna. But at the same time, we may invite Lord Shiva to come to the wedding. Why not? He's a very important person. Why would you not invite him and his son, Ganapati, to come to the wedding? So first verse of any wedding is Om Gananam Tva Ganapatim Avamahe Priyanam Priyapatim Avamahe Nidinam Nidipatim Avamahe Vasumama Om Swasti Om Swasti Om Swasti. All auspiciousness. First, having worshipped Ganapati, we can go on to Shiva, and then we go on and on. So then all blessings are given to the couple, because at that point, beginning their new life together, they want blessings. And yet, Mamekam Sharanam, surrender completely only to Krishna. So when we do surrender to Krishna, of course, we surrender to Krishna through our guru, our spiritual teacher. And Prabhupada comments that the guru, he says, sometimes has to take the accumulated sins of the disciple. So you may be a nice person. That's wonderful. And you may look back over your life and you may think that, well, I haven't been too sinful. In actual fact, I've been quite a good person. So that's understood. That's very nice. But nobody knows what they were doing in their last life. You see, you had a life before this one, and you don't know what you did in that life. And what you did in that life is you contributed different karmas to what is called we like to say a karma pool, a big pool of sanchit. Sanchit karma means the full ocean of your deeds. Each deed has a reaction, and that reaction bears fruit, and it bears fruit in something called prarabdha karma. Prarabdha karma is how your sanchit karma becomes manifest in this life, and it gives you the shape of your face, your parents, your aptitudes, your intelligence, and different things that will happen to you in your life. At the same time, during this lifetime, you're still committing fresh karma, nice fresh karma, some good, some bad. This is known as kriyamana karma, or the karma that goes along with your life. So because of this, we're pretty much like an insect is trapped in a spider's web. So we don't often see it like that. We see that we are free. Prabhupada said one time, he said, just like the boys play football. And the boys play football, and the ball is being kicked in the air. And then it lands, and then it is being kicked again. Soccer, I'm talking about. So he says that in this way, he says, you may be the ball when it is flying through the air. He thinks to himself, I'm free, I'm free. But actually he's been kicked, and he's kicked again. Each time he's thinking, I'm free. It lands and it's kicked again. So we think that we're free. That's our superimposition. We see our state in this world as being freedom with a little bit of bondage, a little bit of problems now and again. Actually, the Bhagavatam has a reverse view, that everything is bondage until you are actually free, until you have the jiva attains moksha. So how to do this? So surrendering to Krishna, this bypasses any of the tendencies to measure one karma after another. So Krishna says, I will absorb your reactions. And Prabhupada comments that the Guru may absorb, but Krishna makes arrangements for that Guru if he absorbs karma on Krishna's behalf. And Prabhupada also said that Krishna, he pays his representatives very well. He protects them and he pays them. He said, just like in New York, a rich man has another man who is his advertising and marketing director. And the advertising and marketing director takes charge of making the rich man, the rich businessman, famous and well-known, his product successful at the highest level of society. So he said, the rich man will always pay his advertising manager very nicely because he's doing so much work for him. He's the most important person in the company, sales and marketing. So he says, similarly, those who are preaching on behalf of Krishna, he said, they're always paid very well by Krishna. He says, don't worry, Krishna says, Ma Suchaha, he will be protected. Good. So all of these stories are leading us up to another king called Raghu. And Raghu, of course, gives the name to the dynasty for many people. So this dynasty, this great family that we're hearing about, is the dynasty of the sun. So the son of the sun is known as Ikshvaku. So sometimes it's called the Sun dynasty or the Ikshvaku dynasty. Sometimes the Raghu dynasty. Surya Vamsa, Ikshvaku Vamsa, Raghu Vamsa. And ultimately, of course, it comes down to a great king known as Dasharatha, who's the father of Rama. And Rama is known as Raghunandan, the great happiness of the entire clan, the entire dynasty. So our story will continue tomorrow. So thank you very much for coming in and listening. The only problem is I can only see one of you, only Prabhuji, who is Bhakti Center incarnate. I haven't seen anybody at all. So it is simply me speaking to a camera or a picture. But thank you for coming in. Hare Krishna. If anybody has any questions, I can try to. Oh, now you're coming in. Now you're letting me see your faces. Kya karte hai? Kya karte hai? From now, I'm seeing faces. Very nice to see faces. Then it becomes more personal for me, you see. I can see Venkatesh, Bandari. I can see Sundarananda Das. I can see Hemangi. Who else can I see? Pink Yogi of Harlem. Very nice. Pat Dunphy. Gaur Kumar. So there's no lack of you on here. That's very nice to see you all. So just one or two questions will help us to move things along. Anything, or comments, or corrections? I'll take corrections as well.
Thank you so much, bro. I really appreciate this point of superimposing that you elaborated in so many nice ways with nice examples and stories. It was a very relevant point of how we naturally superimpose, especially when you said how children generally tell parents like, I know, because I live with my parents now. It's my experience also. I feel like I often tell I know. So it was like interesting to hear that from you, that how children always keep telling parents that I know. So, but
even you.
So if other devotees have any questions or comments, please feel free to share.
We have some chat coming up here. Oh, they're all saying thank you. That's very nice. Yes. Jamuna Jaya says he's going to teach Surya Namaskar, that is bowing down before the sun. Radhika says thank you, iPhone. Jagadishwar Nimai says thank you. Vineet Chandar, yes, kya karte hai? Have to run. Good.
One. So since there are no other questions, I had one small clarification that I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Like as devotees, we are like, as how you were explaining, Krishna speaks about demigod worship and everything in Bhagavad Gita. And and we also like very much trained to just worship Krishna. Like even though we respect the demigods, we don't offer worship or anything. But like practically, say for example, I'm personally living with my parents. We have our deities, and also we have like various demigods from earlier, like that they were worshiping. They haven't removed or anything like that. So I also do the worship, and I also offer the flowers, and I also like take clean all the altar, other photographs, and offer flowers, and do everything that I do as part of cleaning the altar and worshiping my Gaurnita deities. So like many times I feel little kind of like little hesitation, even though like I offer respects, and I pray also that you're all servants of Krishna. So I offer the Mahaprasad of Gaurnita to them. in terms of flowers and other things. But still, I feel like will regularly doing that be considered like a worship or anything like that?
Yes. Yeah. Well, Srila Rupa Goswami, who is our Acharya, he says that a pure Vaishnav does not worship Ganapati for anything. He's very strong on it. You know, Sanatan Goswami, Gopal Bhatta Goswami also like that. Meaning that we do not worship in order to ask them for anything. But there's a difference between appealing to them for something we need, mistakenly understanding that they are the givers rather than Sri Krishna is the giver, and offering our respects. So, you know, pranam we can offer. And I think for myself, when you read the Bhagavatam, you can't help but fail to respect the devatas. Because you know that even though sometimes they're also covered over, they're also great servants of Krishna. But in my life as a Western convert to Krishna consciousness, who did not come from a background where the devatas were worshipped, they will feature in my life only for ceremonies. But I think that if you grew up with them, you may adjust your patterns of behavior to accommodate them. But as you say, we're passing the Mahaprasad on to them. Someone had a question. It was,
Yeah.
can you see
Athena.
that question? Yeah. Go ahead, Athena.
Hare Krishna, Kripamoya, Prabhu, Dandava
Hare
Pranams.
Krishna.
Did Janavi send you the video yet? I'm just curious.
Janavi sent me a video with a few mad women
Yes,
telling me how much they're fans. Yes, I saw that one.
she said you didn't believe that people enjoyed your classes, and I was like, and she was like, I have to record a video, and that was me screaming right there with the other ladies. So and she joked that she was like, oh great, and it's just only girls.
So you were that person.
Yes, I was that person. We love your classes. So thank you so much. Gaushan didn't send out the speaker list until late, so I would have been super excited last night. Really like it. Anyways, it was a nice surprise. So thank you so much for again speaking this morning. I always look forward to your classes. I had a somewhat related question, and I apologize. I didn't want to take up too much time. I'm referring to my notes, and I apologize if I'm not so exacting with my details, but perhaps you can help me. I thought it was very interesting, and it makes sense, I guess, that you had said for the Brahmins, their goal is moksha, liberation, but for the Kshatriyas, it's heaven. So Swaga Loka. And so in the Mahabharata, there's someone, if you could comment, the Brahmins are supposed to teach the Kshatriyas, give them all the wisdom. So shouldn't they also teach the Kshatriyas or the kings that their goal should also be liberation, and give them the highest knowledge? I can understand maybe the Kshatriyas, perhaps less educated, could want to be elevated to, say, Indraloka or Swargaloka. But for those who are taking the kings, they should know that moksha is the goal, given that they're taking all the advice from Brahmins and being trained in the highest wisdom, just like the Pandavas. That's one. And then two, I'm actually pulling out my book right now, the Mahabharata by Krishna Das. But there was a part where I believe, yes, Yudhisthira had to perform the Rajasura sacrifice because they were saying that Pandu, their father, didn't go to Vaikuntha and actually went to Yamaraja's abode. And I thought that was I was a little confused by that, because wasn't Pandu wasn't he also in one sense maybe a pure devotee? I don't know if you can comment on that. And he was so pious even just throughout his life, and even being, say, a celibate king up until Krishna's arrangement for him to leave his body. But I guess I was curious. Sorry, why would you sure? They were saying in the Mahabharata, Yudhishthira wanted to do the Rajashira sacrifice to make sure his father Pandu left Yamaraja's abode, which is hell, to go to Indraloka, and also secure that himself, Yudhishthira, would also go to Indraloka. But they're all pure devotees, so shouldn't they know and want to go to Goloka or Vaikuntha? So I suppose I didn't have enough time to, I guess, formulate my question, but if you could comment a little bit on some of the things that I threw at you. I'm sorry you have to decipher and filter through that. But if you can comment, especially since the Pandavas, they're so educated and they're also pure devotees, they should want to go to Goloka or Vaikuntha. And so, and shouldn't all the saintly kings who are advised by the Brahmins want that? And how was it possible that Pandu ended up in hell, which is Yamaraja's abode, and not Vaikuntha? And why was Yudhishthira interested in the Rajashira sacrifice to bring his father to Indraloka and not even Vaikuntha? As Pandu is a pure devotee, and also Indraloka is just heaven, they should know better. And how did Pandu even end up in Yamaraja's abode and not even the heavenly planets, being such a pious king? And I would have even thought Vaikuntha, given that he's perhaps a pure devotee. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good questions. We in the Abrahamic Western world, generally we also superimpose on Vedic culture a kind of binary function, up or down, heaven or hell, ultimate or relative. And in one sense, Vedic culture is all about getting a better future birth. It's about getting a heavenly destination if you can. And a Brahmin, his function in society is to really ascertain what this person in front of me is capable of, what they will be capable of with the life that they've got left to them, and how to dispense to them information and guidance which will be helpful for them so that they can stay strong through this life and not crash. One of the biggest problems in religion is crashing and burning, where the religious advice given to you is too hard for you to do. And so you take to it, you maintain it for a few months or even a few years, and then you crash. Because really, the religion that's been given to you is not commensurate with your ability to follow. And so a good Brahmin analyzes a person first. He's like a teacher analyzing a student, trying to understand, this person's coming to me for guidance. What are they capable of? What can I tell them that will help them towards the next level, and then possibly the next level, the next level. So they're very careful, very measured, and it's not always the ultimate. So that's one thing. However, demigod worship traditionally always involves worship to Vishnu. And the Vedas describe that there's a hierarchy of gods with Agni at the bottom and Vishnu at the top, and that Vishnu's abode is the ultimate abode to which when one attains, one never returns to this world. So that's the idea. So that, but usually the idea is that this life is not enough to do everything that you need to do in order to become pure enough to go to Vishnu. You have to, it's a long project. And unless you are pretty intense about it, you won't make it. So why should a Brahmin then tell you the highest thing just to see you fail? So it's not that there was a culture of Krishna consciousness, but there's a culture of giving people the information that was the best thing for them at that time. The other question you asked was about Pandu, and one complication is that if you become the executive head of a country, 1/6 of the papa or karmic, the bad karma, accrues to you, as does 1/6 of all the good deeds that people perform. So if you're a good king and you're able to encourage people in good deeds, selfish humanitarian work, then you can reap the result of that. But if not, you reap the... So some kings were very, very good, but they had to carry a lot of luggage with them, and that karmic luggage took them to different destination after death. So Vedic stories are always about trying to help us understand that there's a law of unintended consequences. You know, you can do something and then be surprised where the reactions are very difficult, or a person seems to be leading a good life, but unfortunately the 1,000 previous lives caught up with them, and then they had some difficulty. But the abode of Yamaraj isn't ultimately hell. It's a clearinghouse from which you move on. That's the concept. That Yamaloka is it's a peripheral state in which you are, you know, again, your tendencies are judged, and you're given the results of your activities. But again, these things are there. Certain cases are isolated for us so that we can begin to appreciate, never to become religiously comfortable. So it's said that a good Brahmin or a good scripture comforts the afflicted and afflicts the comfortable. So when you're afflicted with pain and doubt, then turn to Shastra, turn to the pages of scripture, because you'll be comforted. But when you get comfortable, you can expect Shastra to afflict you by telling you, don't get comfortable, because, you know, no matter how good you think you are, there's always something that may catch up with you. So that's the general balance, is to keep us on the right path. So that's the way I'm answering your questions this morning. Hope it's okay.
Thank you so much. Your explanations made a lot of sense. I apologize, I don't want to hold you, but I had 2 more questions, if that's okay, if you have time. If not,
I don't know whether I have time. I'm looking to my controller here, my Bhakti Center controller.
No problem. As long as you have time, you can take the questions. No problem.
Okay, Athena Yoga.
Yay! Great, thank you.
Short questions and I'll give you short answers. Okay,
great. Just related questions. So first one, I don't know. I was curious. I had written down a question related to this, and I'm not sure if it showed up in the Mahabharata. But I don't know anywhere in scripture, but I presume perhaps you've read somewhere. I was curious, when the Vishnu Dutas come, does that mean you automatically get taken to the spiritual world, Vaikuntha? or does that mean you've just done more good than bad, and they perhaps would take you to your next body or the next material planet?
No, if they show up, it's your next destination is guaranteed.
So if you
the other thing to be conscious of is you have the Ramayana, you have the Mahabharata, and you have the Bhagavad Gita. And Ramayana is a book that tells us the story of perfect behavior. And Mahabharata is a book which tells us about, Ramayana is about black and white, ultimate good, ultimate evil, like that, and the clash between them. Mahabharata is kind of gray. There's a lot of gray areas in the Mahabharata. You're not quite sure who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, who's the hero, and who's the enemy, because they're wrapped in each other. That's why Mahabharata can be a little confusing. It's a little confusing because things happen that you're not quite expecting. And then Srimad Bhagavatam is above good and bad. It's a book about transcendental people, how transcendence is achieved, and how some people aimed for it but fell short of it. It's a book about. It's definitely not a book about going to heaven or avoiding hell. It's a book about the spirituality of the pure emotions of the devotee on the way to the ultimate destination. So these three books, sometimes when you read the Srimad Bhagavatam and then you come to the Mahabharata, you won't be able to understand it because it's a different kind of book for a different kind of reader. Mahabharata causes us to question what is good, what is bad. Is a person all bad? What about Karna? Is he all bad? No. He had a really difficult upbringing. Well, what about the Pandavas? Are they all good? Well, the way it's told in the Mahabharata, of course, describes different destinations for them and different complications. And you think, well, maybe they shouldn't have had a complicated life because they knew Krishna so well. But when we come to the Srimad Bhagavatam, we find that the pure devotional content of anybody's activities is sort of squeezed from the cow of their life, and we get the milk, we get the pure devotional milk of their life. So to go from Bhagavatam to Mahabharata is not always so helpful because Mahabharata gives us a slightly different message. It's meant for a different readership, of course. Srila Vyasadeva wrote it for that reason. He wrote it for people who are not lovers of Krishna, but a little bit more interested in hearing about the people who were close to Krishna, but a lot of others as well. So there's a lot of sages and demigods and angels and gods and demons in it. So it's more for people who are still in the business of weighing up good deeds, bad deeds, and how to be moral. Whereas Bhagavatam says right in the very beginning that this book is Dharma Prochida Kaitavotra Niramatsaranam Satam. We put away those things, and we're just going to talk about the essence of the soul's service to Krishna, the eternal life of the soul. That's what this book is about. That says in the beginning of the book. And, whereas Mahabharata talks about the family, the dynasty, how the dynasty is delivered. But the Bhagavatam talks about how to become elevated away from family attachment. So it's good to read two books, but you read one book, but if you read them side by side, there's possibility for becoming confused because they're different messages, slightly different messages from a different perspective. Anyway, I thought I would say that because that's relevant to the questions, but go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'm say, humbly a student of Gautam Prabhu, and he's also said that too, that the Mahabharata is just a book of contradictions, and it does make you think a lot. And I'm still making my way through it, but I guess still on this question, I was always confused. You had mentioned that Yamaraj is just a clearinghouse, but my understanding was, so the Yamadutas come, I thought, if they're taking you to hell, and then I guess the Vishnu Dutas take it if you got your ticket back home to Godhead. So then I was just curious, if those are very extremes, but what if you're something in the middle? What happens? I guess the soul just subtle body automatically, or because they have to be taken either way. I guess the soul has to be taken from the body. So who takes it? If Vishnu Dutas only if you're going to Vaikuntha, and Yamadutas are only, I thought, going to hell versus the clearinghouse. Then what happens if something in between? How does the soul transmigrate? Who takes you? I don't have.
Yeah, most souls who are not haven't attained their pure devotional capacity are judged by Yamaraj, but increasingly they are quickly judged, assessed, and moved on. See, if the Yamadutas arrive, it's a bit like if the police come to your house. You can sort of bet that the police are not delivering a cake. Or they're not there to sing you happy birthday. They have a function. And, like if you're, they may be there as a surprise, but generally speaking, they're coming because they are law keepers. That's the idea. The dark uniform, the weapons. So someone like that turns up at your door and, uh-oh. They're messengers of a higher law-keeping body. So similarly, the universe itself has laws, and if you break them, then the police arrive, and then they're not so pretty. So they will arrive and they will handcuff you and take you. Of course, there's a wonderful story to illustrate how the thief who spent 5 minutes listening to the Bhagavatam, I think we may have done this before, he was taken before Yamaraj, and Chitragupta, the scribe of Yamaraj, says, well, this is a very bad person. He's done this and he's done this, and all your sins are recounted. And Yamaraj says, okay, is there anything good that he's done? He said, well, he listened to 5 minutes of Srimad Bhagavatam. He said, all right, I'll give you a choice, my dear soul. You can either go to hell now, or you can have another 5 minutes of Bhagavatam. So he said, I'll have another 5 minutes of Bhagavatam. So he came before Yamaraj again, and it was read that he'd done 10 minutes of Bhagavatam. So in this way, he kept on delivering himself with each appearance before Yamaraj. And one time, after many, many years of Bhagavatam, he came in front of Yamaraj and with tears in his eyes, and Yamaraj said, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. Now it's time for you to go somewhere else. Take birth again as a devotee of the Lord and help others. So that's one notion. But Yamaraj is also a devotee. He's a Mahajan. He's one of the 12 devotees who are singled out for us to offer our respects to. When you move into a new house, you honor Yamaraj as one of the 12 Mahajans. You still with us?
Yes, listening very intently.
Yeah, listening intently. So, generally speaking, I am a creature of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam dispenses with, if you want detailed accounts of where you go after death, then you have to read the Garuda Purana, because the Garuda Purana gets into it in detail. If a person has done this in their life, this is where they go. If a person is this is where they go and how they appear in their next life. He who commits this sin will be robbed of this in the next life. So you'll be able to know what are the particular destinations of someone. So the Garuda Purana has many pages like that. But again, it's for those who are interested in that thing. The Bhagavatam just says, you know, the Bhagavatam is interested in the Yamadutas only when it comes to the point of the Yamadutas, you know, taking a soul that is also a person who chanted the name of God. So the 6th canto was identified by Prabhupada as one of the most important parts of the Srimad Bhagavatam for this reason, that it shows the power of the holy name of Krishna to deliver someone, even who's led a sinful life. So the Yamadutas come at the last minute, and the person is delivered by the Vishnu Dutas, who arrive at the very same time. I think we should conclude here, but I thank you all very much for your questions. I must also depart. And Prabhuji, next time we will continue the discussion. All right?
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. His grace Kripamoya Prabhu ki jai.
Thank you very much. Haribo.
Thank you so much for your session. Your patient answering. Thank you, everyone. I know some of the questions were unanswered. We'll try to get these questions answered soon from Prabhu. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.